here on the What Hi-Fi and Stuff International News Stage. We spent yesterday going around much of the show doing all the international press conferences with the major exhibitors like Samsung, LG, Panasonic, and many others. And I've got with me here today my colleagues, Tom Parsons from Stuff and Simon Lucas from What Hi-Fi. And we just thought we'd give you a quick sort of 10-minute roundup at the beginning of the first day of the show on the kind of things that we've been looking at and seeing at the biggest tech show on the planet. So, Simon, first up, I think you did quite a few TV press conferences yesterday.
I saw a few TVs yesterday, yeah, and I saw, overwhelmingly, I saw 4K TVs and I saw HDR TVs or UHD premium TVs, which is a recently agreed upon standard, I believe.
Yeah.
The HDR,
high dynamic range, Simon.
Sorry?
High dynamic range.
The high dynamic range.
That's the one.
Revolution would appear to have at least gathered momentum this time. And a lot of companies now, the main manufacturers that you mentioned, have all got high HDR TVs in the range now.
Yeah. So this UHD premium standard that they've agreed, this is the sort of big announcement.
Well, this has been agreed in the last couple of days, hasn't it? The UHD Alliance have agreed on a set of criteria that defines what a UHD TV is, a UHD premium TV is, and they have a logo and everything.
I think I've got to admit, I think the UHD premium badge is already pretty hilarious. In that every new Samsung TV, every new LG TV, I'm pretty sure all the new Sony TVs, basically every TV from a major every 4K TV from a major manufacturer has got this new badge, which sort of immediately makes it feel pretty irrelevant.
Yeah,
I
was at the LG press conference, which I think was the first one. It was at 8 o'clock yesterday morning, and they announced, the world's first UHD premium TV, swiftly followed by, I think it was then sort of
Panasonic after that, and then it was Samsung.
So basically, everybody has announced the first one.
LG was only the world's first because they had scheduled their press conference.
Yeah.
That's all that happened.
Okay.
But in fairness to LG, I think certainly from where I'm sitting, the TV of the show and potentially the new TV benchmark looks like their new G6, that signature G6 4K OLED, which just looks awesome. Yeah. It's a really beautiful thing, and we already know, having tested the 4K OLEDs this year, the 960, that this is 4K OLED is a wonderful thing, and this is the new.
It certainly ticks all the boxes, doesn't it? It has the correct specification. It had on paper, it has everything ready there to succeed. And it's got its logo.
Yeah. And it's got the logo.
And this year, like last, LG was going very sort of big on OLED, but they seem to be the main manufacturer driving it, because Samsung are not doing OLED, and Sony are.
Samsung have decided against OLED.
I think that's really interesting. I did think this year, other manufacturers, I thought Samsung and Samsung and Sony would inevitably announce 4K OLEDs, just because it feels like, having seen the LGs this year, they're so good. It feels as though 4K OLED is still the benchmark. And I thought that we would see the likes of Samsung go in for it this year. But they're sticking with their SUHD line instead.
From where we're sitting, if you want the ultimate sort of TV experience, it would seem to be a sort of combination of 4K, OLED, HDR, high dynamic range, and then all the sort of extra color, the deeper blacks and everything.
And you've got things like Dolby Vision.
Yes.
And if I'm honest, you might be able to tell me what is Dolby Vision, Simon?
Well, Dolby Vision it's HDR, but it's called Dolby Vision.
So it's
a set of criteria. It's a high dynamic range thing. It's a set of criteria that says that we can offer this contrast, this color gamut.
Yeah.
Exactly the same way that HDR is, but as is perpetually the case in this industry, the same thing can be called different things in order to confuse the consumer.
Yeah, it's never simple. Yeah,
but
even we get confused sometimes.
Is LG the only one that's announced, the only company that's announced that its TVs have the Dolby Vision badge? Is that right?
Yes.
That's the only one that I saw.
So far,
I think it's very interesting. But a lot of, we also saw yesterday announcement that a lot of the Blu-ray publishers, a lot of the studios sign up for Dolby Vision, which makes it more interesting as far as I'm concerned, just because it does become a standard, and if it's recognised by the studios and the TV manufacturers, that's something you can kind of rely on a little bit.
Yeah, because the other thing with HDR, of course, is we're still waiting for HDR content. Now, I think I'm right in saying Netflix have said they will adopt it.
Yeah.
But well, you know, we're still waiting to see who will actually provide the
And interestingly,
HDR-related
Well, we saw
content
some
to view on these
4K Blu-ray players yesterday, didn't we?
Oh yeah, that was the other.
And
interesting thing, wasn't it?
the idea of combining the sort of 4K resolution with the HDR criteria as well is something that apparently is on the menu. And Samsung were talking about over 100 titles on disc before this year is out, and that's from 20th Century Fox alone.
Yeah, well that's cool. And then of course with the Blu-ray players themselves, we've had some interesting developments because there's the new Panasonic player, which we understand is going to go on sale in Europe sometime in the spring this year.
In the spring.
For under €1,000, I think is about as close as we can get on the price at
Samsung,
the
of course,
moment.
they're a bit more go-ahead than that, aren't they? Theirs is going on sale in the spring, 400 quid.
Yes, so there's already a bit of a price war, even though we've got 2 in the market.
Yeah.
So we've got 4K Blu-ray discs coming from the studios. We've got at least 2 4K Blu-ray players we know about, and obviously the screens to plug them into. Now, in terms of we've talked about sort of vision. In terms of sound, obviously Dolby Atmos is a big thing here, as it was last year.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I think, the first Dolby Atmos soundbar with Dolby Atmos enabled wireless rear speakers from Samsung.
That's right. Yeah, it was. I'm not surprised that Samsung have gone to town on Atmos. I am a little bit surprised they've done it via a soundbar. But nevertheless, yeah, that's ongoing as well. Something else that Sony have decided they can live without. But later this week, I'm supposed to be going to see Dolby here, and they've got a demonstration of Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos in the same package, and which would seem to be the grail.
The new AV Holy Grail, for
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Well, you mentioned briefly that Sony, for some reason, on their, as far as we know, on their new AV receivers, they still haven't put Atmos on there, which seems a strange decision.
No, their new £500 receiver, the 1070, is not Atmos enabled. No, everybody else's £500 receiver is an Atmos receiver, but Sony are. They go their own way in this respect.
Interesting. Okay. Now, going a bit old school, because obviously we do work on what hi-fi. The other thing we saw yesterday, which got a lot of excitement, was the revival of the
Record
Technics.
players.
Record players. The revival of the Technics SL1200 turntable, I believe.
With the return of the king.
Yeah.
Meet the new boss with any luck, same as the old boss.
Yeah.
And that got a lot of excitement at IFA in September last year in Berlin, and when it was just a square with a circle on it.
Yeah,
now it's an
prototype.
actual record player. Everyone is just agog.
But my understanding is that for the last few years, AudioTechnica have basically been making that turntable.
Yeah.
So is AudioTechnica not going to be able to do that anymore?
Well, no, it's my understanding that the AudioTechnica was the old SL1200 that was discontinued in 2010. This is a new design now.
Right, okay.
1200G is a new design. It's four-layer plinth, new tone arm, redesigned. It looks, because they're sensible, it looks like an old SL1200, but it's a new design and
it's
a
quite a risky thing when the classic is still out there to release the new version.
This is the new classic,
classic,
but not the only brand launching a turntable. This was quite a. This caused a ripple.
Do you want to talk about the Sony turntable?
I
think you should.
I'm a little bit excited about the Sony turntable. Am I? I don't know.
Tell us about it.
So the Sony turntable. Firstly, Sony doing a turntable. I'm led to believe that actually they have been quietly churning out the odd turntable for a while now, but not.
Odd is right.
Yeah, but not really, making much headway there. And actually, on stage last night, they announced a new turntable, a premium design. But what it does is it will essentially rip your vinyl into high-res audio files.
That you can then play on your computer.
It is very, very loaded. It's a moving magnet design. It has a built-in phono stage, so it should just be a plug-and-play thing. But yeah, as you say, apparently an A to D converter, or something they're calling DSD Premium, which is, again, just something to confuse people, I think. But an A to D converter with the possibility of going all the way to high-res resolution.
Yeah.
Now, if this works, right, then they should be made compulsory for every home in the country. But if it works,
I can see both of you guys are going to get very excited.
If it
about
works,
this.
I think it's a really interesting thing, and as you say, one of the biggest things, obviously, because you're recording analog, the actual hardware, the turntable itself, the tone arm, all of that stuff needs to be absolutely spot on.
Completely. Yeah.
So that's going to be a big thing as well. From a company like Sony, which has obviously got a rich audio heritage, but at the same time isn't exactly hasn't been producing amazing turntables.
Yeah. They've not been known for it.
Well, you're right.
So that's going to be really interesting.
You're absolutely right. There's no two ways about it. If this is going to do what it purports to do, it's going to be a bloody complicated piece of equipment. And there's no way you're going to be able to take it out of the box, plug it in and say, right, here we go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought. So it's going to be a little bit demanding of consumers, and I don't know if consumers are prepared to be demanded of.
Yeah, and it comes with it's as you say, it's kind of a plug and play thing. It's the tone arm, everything's all included, but also you download bespoke software so that the ripping's all handled pretty neatly by that apparently, and then you can cut and do whatever you want with the resulting audio files. So it's going to be a really interesting thing.
This is what we've taken from yesterday's press conferences, isn't it? Really complicated tellies, really far out algorithms for home cinema audio, and record players.
Yes, and of course high-res audio, just as you mentioned that as well.
Yes, hasn't somebody already? Hasn't one of the streaming services confirmed that?
Files from a download site called 2L at the moment.
Scandinavian
it's going to need a higher profile than a company called 2L if it's going to work, but I'm sure that is coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were demonstrating that streaming MQA via Tidal, and the whole point of MQA obviously is to be able to package these high-res files so small that they are streamable down a standard broadband network.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
I saw it and I heard
well,
it.
the Tidal announcement is interesting because, I mean, we've been expecting that for a while. I think, I mean, talking behind the scenes here, what's happened is that Tidal is on its third CEO, I think, in the last 8 months. They've had a few changes of personnel.
It'll be your turn soon.
So whereas I think they were hoping very much to announce basically invented it, so he'll be on the stage later on today, and we'll be talking this morning to some of the hardware manufacturers like Bluesound, who have actually developed prototype MQA compatible products. Now, we've talked a lot about audio and TV, Tom, but from a stuff perspective, you guys are into your wearable tech. I see you've got your Apple Watch.
Got the Apple Watch, yeah.
What's been exciting?
Actually, I think the most exciting wearable we've seen so far is actually from Casio. Casio's launched an Android Wear Watch yesterday during their press conference. What's really interesting about it is it's essentially got two screens. It's got a monochrome screen and a color screen. So you can choose between either something a bit more vibrant and colorful, and in that case, you know, the battery life will only last about a day, as it will with an Apple Watch. But you can switch it to this monochrome display, which will give you a battery life of about a month, which sounds very cool. But one of the biggest, I think, actually one of the biggest things to happen kind of today, right now, a couple of hours ago, is the Oculus Rift is available for pre-order.
Have you ordered yours?
Right
have
now.
you got your order in?
I couldn't get the internet working, so no. So we finally have a price for one of the big VR headsets. It's going to be £500.
That's not bad.
Plus delivery.
Yeah.
Plus you're going to have a pretty top-notch PC in order to actually power it anyway. So it's certainly a pretty pricey option. But you can pre-order one now, and it will be delivered at the end of March, and that's so exciting.
You'll be one of the first to get one.
Well, I'm certainly hoping so, but I'm here rather than putting my pre-order in, so I may be missing out. It'll be Christmas by the time I go.
Don't peak too early, end of March, or it'll be a fever pitch.
And of course, HTC is here, and we've heard news that they've got the new version of their Vive headset. I was disappointed that Sony didn't actually mention PlayStation VR yesterday.
No,
it's on all their banners. It's on all their banners, and CES isn't traditionally a gaming show, so it wasn't a big surprise. But when we saw it on the banners, we thought maybe there'll be a price.
Here we go.
Maybe we'll have a release date. But actually, still silent on that. So
well, they might be saving it up.
Yeah,
fingers crossed. They might
but
be
this is definitely a massive year in terms of gaming, and VR is I think all three headsets are going to be released this year. So this is the year that kind of takes off.
I think it's really going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fabulous, exciting thing. That's
and wearable tech, is this the year? Every year we say, is this the year it's going to really kick in? Or
yeah, I think.
Is it still a slow burn?
I think it's kind of bubbling under, isn't it? There's a lot of initial excitement, and a lot of first-generation products have been out already. You still these days have to choose basically between whether you want a fitness device or a smart device. The Apple Watch as great as it is, it's a smart device rather than a fitness device, really. One of the interesting ones is Garmin have announced a new version of the Fenix 3, which is a really, really superb sports watch. And this, so I think that's a very exciting one. Some interesting. We had Fitbit announce. This is a really interesting one. Fitbit announced a smartwatch, basically, going basically toe to toe a little bit more affordable, but taking on the likes of Apple, and their shares immediately dropped.
Oh yeah, I read about
pretty
this.
massively.
20%.
Yeah.
It's something like 18%. Yeah.
18%.
So that's a very interesting thing. It's Fitbit have kind of had this. They've had a niche for a little while, and clearly shareholders aren't massively.
They're not convinced.
Not convinced.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for the first day at CES. Thanks for listening to the international news stage here with Stuff and What Hi-Fi. We'll have people coming on the stage throughout the day from different manufacturers and different companies. So keep watching us on whathifi.com and stuff.tv. Thank you.